And I promise it'll be less than 30 minutes, including the music. Thank you. I didn't exactly know what I was going to do. I started by thinking, well, I'll make some, driving down, I thought I'll just do something dedicated to the challenge and the kids. I don't see too many kids here. I see people who were kids and maybe still are to some degree. I've just been spending time with my nephew who's 11 years old, so my framework for kids is a little different than it was a week ago. But how did you know? That it's sort of like landed. It's sort of like focused in. I knew that if I played in a certain, whatever key I was in, there was going to be a tonic, right? There's going to be the home note for that thing. And then all the other notes sort of like fall into line, like the planets sort of fall into orbits. And so I knew that summertime is on the 5th note, the dominant note of the scale. And so when I ended up hitting the G and then I hit the D, I said, oh, well, actually I'm in summertime and I'm sweating and it's hot outside, so let me just see if it comes to that. And when I hit the F sharp here, it was also a note that's sort of like in summertime. It's sort of like it made me play itself, you know. And by being open to that, I was able to do it. And then at the end, I thought, let me just stop here and see if anybody knows what it is. Thank you for knowing what it was, because that helps. Because what's going on when we actually are being who we are, all the time we're using everything we know. And our ability to do that in flexible performance is something that people have said is important to students and everyone actually in real life. There's sort of like, if I go to Williamsburg, Virginia, I can see what it was like before there was electricity. I can see what it was like while there was still slavery. I can see what it was like when we were still a colony. I can see all these things. And I can see what schools were like without technology. Now I can go to any school in the country and see the same thing. Okay? So the interpretive village way that we keep our schools from being that thing that is consistent across generations is quaint, but it's not serving us anymore. And what I'm going to try to say here is really actually how the challenge might save New Mexico from itself. For 20-something years, more than that, and for at least 12 that I know of, I've physically witnessed what's been going on with the challenge, and I don't always get to go to the events, but it makes my heart glad that every year there's another cohort of kids that we've gotten out of their way, and we've empowered them to do things that most people don't think are even possible. Wouldn't it be great if that could be more widely available? Wouldn't that be great? If this might be the moment, and the Common Core might be part of the way that we can get there. So I want to share a couple things with you in the 30 minutes that I've got. I promised I would not hawk my book, but I do promise to show you that it actually exists. And I'm putting it over here because I worked on it for 8 years to come up with the stuff I'm going to show you. That's all I'm going to say about that. But there was an interesting thing that happened on the way to ISTE. I cut class. I cut class because a friend of mine invited me to go up in an airplane. But this is what I was going to show them at ISTE. Here's our goal, actually, what we're trying to do with Common Core and everything else we're trying to do, is have kids who can apply what they know in ways that are useful in real life. And we ought to actually call that, shorthand for that is College and Career Ready, which is a big part of the Common Core. And this is the Guido Sarducci School of the 5-Minute University. You remember that from Saturday Night Live? I'm going to tell you everything you need on in 5 minutes. You're not going to remember it after you're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, but buy stuff. Buy low, sell high, right? This is all you need to know about the Common Core. It's shifting from percentages to performances. So here's a quick trick question. Raise your hand if you would get on an airplane that could reach 85% of takeoff speed. No, you wouldn't. The number bigger than 100% is really kind of a requirement here. We don't care if it can go 120% of takeoff speed, but what we do with our kids is we say there are cut scores. And the cut scores are a percentage of proficiency that is a politically determined number, not like the freezing point of water, which is kind of like consistent depending on air pressure and altitude. Same with boiling point of water. If you make rice here, you know that. So what we're trying to say is we're moving to these performances. Would you get on that plane with a pilot who had gotten an A in everything except landing? No, but we let our kids do that because the cut score says this is good enough. And what we're saying is there's like the Yoda thing. There is no try. Either you do it or you don't do it. So that's where we're headed. This is what Common Core is all about. Are we done? Good enough, right? So let me show you what happened. This guy, Roger Wagner, is a friend of mine. I've known him 20 years. He invented HyperStudio. Some of you old-timers may remember when that was the best-selling software in education. Roger said to me, well, I see you got to go to CETA. There's all these big meetings. You're going to be doing a lot of important stuff. We may not even have time for dinner. Too bad. I'm a pilot. Would you like to go up? Yeah. I'll go into CETA next year. I didn't go to CETA this year. This is the flight check. This is the little plane we went in. I've been up in planes, but never one that weighed less than my car. So here he is checking to see if there's enough gas and if there's water in the gas, because if there is, you'll die. And the flight check is kind of important. But now they have GPSs, so you actually have a GPS in your plane. Your plane doesn't get lost the same way that it used to. And next thing I know, I'm standing there with Roger. We needed gas, so the gas lady took our picture on my phone. That's how tiny this little plane is. You actually move every one of those surfaces. You go through this thing for 45 minutes in your flight check, and then I'm sitting there, and I realize this is actually going to happen. And then, Roger is such a great teacher. He says, see those pedals by your feet? So yeah, he says, push the left one. We stop. He says, if you push the top of the pedal, that's the brake. Push the bottom of the pedal, the plane will turn left. He says, go to the runway. So he has me driving the plane on the ground to the runway, going, you know, sort of like that. Then he does a few more checks of these things so that we know the engine won't tap out. Then we go up. The plane takes off at 55 miles an hour. So as you're going down bad traffic on I-25, you could lift up if you were in that plane. And this was our challenge. The clouds were coming in. If we didn't do our flight before those clouds got there, we wouldn't be able to see the runway and we would have a very, not very pleasant time. So we get up there, and we're 3,500 feet in the air. We're over San Diego, and Roger says to me, okay, I'm going to do something. Now, I'm letting go. Oh. We're hanging in the middle of the air at 100 miles an hour, 3,500 feet, and he says, now lean forward. So we lean forward, and the plane starts to go down. And then he says, lean backwards. We do the roller coaster thing with our arms back, and the plane starts to go up. He says, here's the point. The plane is in perfect balance. You don't need to do anything. In fact, please don't do anything radical. If you do something radical, that's when we're going to get in trouble. He says another thing. Your instruments are 3 seconds behind reality. If you see something you don't like and you respond to your instruments, we're going to get in trouble. Instead, look at the horizon. And if you feel like we're going up, we probably are. And if the instruments say we're going up too high, well then gently do something about it. And then count to 10. Because it's going to take 3 seconds before the instruments are going to catch up to what you did. And if you're playing whack-a-mole every time you see something you don't like we do in education with test scores, you're probably going to crash and we're all going to die. And that's what we're probably going to do. We're probably going to crash and we're all going to die unless we wake up and realize we're in a bad dream. And that this is about giving kids the opportunity they need and about us getting out of the way and about us we have a choice to make. Are we going to continue doing what makes us comfortable as adults? Or are we going to do what's needed for kids? And it's that stark. It really is. And by the way, there are people who will say, I'm going to let you wrestle this out of my cold, this is the Charlton Heston line. You're going to wrestle this out of my cold, dead hands? Wasn't that what he said about taking my gun away? Well, the power of the educational establishment feels the same way about its power, even though you can't see it as a gun. And even though, rigor mortis might not even help with their cold, dead hands. So we have an issue here. I'm speaking a little more forcefully than I normally would, and I'm so glad it's being recorded. Anyway, here I am suddenly flying a freaking plane. And there's my pilot. And the reason I could do it is I sit next to a guy who's done it for 600 hours. I had the sense to ask him that before he went up. It's a very good question, Ferdi. Not many people ask that, yes. And do you know what happens? You have to be up there for 100 hours before you can fly by yourself. And he said, I've studied the Book of Death. The Book of Death is all of the accidents that the National Transportation Board puts out and why they happen. And here's some startling fact. Most people die at 200 hours. Why? Why do you think they might die at 200 hours? Take a guess.
Complacency.
Complacency. What else?
Yeah, it's between where you think you can do it, but you can't.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing that's really the killer. Pardon me. Here's the thing that really is, here's the real thing. Most of the people who die are not alone. They're there with their instructor. And they get into a dispute. That's not the way I taught you to do it. Well, this is how I'm going to do it. Well, no, you're not. Well, this is it. And in the final moments, the instructor takes the control back and crashes the plane. That's most of the accidents. All right? How's that for a metaphor for our education system, huh? Is that great? So, we have some control issues here that we need to think about. And anyway, it worked out really nice. We got to see there, I'm flying, the clouds are coming in. We finally lined, there's my wings. I earned my wings. I've had my first flight. And what it did was it changed my entire framework for professional development. One school district that I'm starting to work with has 300,000 students, actually it's ESC in St. Louis. They have as many students as we have in New Mexico, just about. If you count the ones who were absent, we have the same number of students. All right? So on a given day, they said, we're all about depth of knowledge. Do you do depth of knowledge in your system? And I said, well, I haven't put it in there, but I can. Just like today, I finally finished putting in all the CSTA standards in the database, which if we're lucky, I'll show you how your project looks against that. But everybody's trying to get everybody to the top level all the time. There's only a problem with that. There's not enough pressure for us to breathe, and there's not enough oxygen for us to live up there. You can hang out at 20,000 feet if you're in a pressurized cabin or if you have a mask. But if you're just going up there in that little plane, you don't want to go to 20,000 feet for very long because you can't live there. And actually, you can't get there if you don't have certain recall skills. Like, what does that thing do about my radio frequency? How's that work again? You have to know that stuff. I have to know when I hit a G and I hit a B flat, I'm suddenly in G minor. And once I'm in G minor, I know where all the other notes make sense. And then I can pick any tune that I happen to know in that key. And then if somebody else said I can't sing it there, I have to sing it 3 notes lower. I have to know how to make that happen if I'm going to be a musician. But I don't want to starve to death, so I'm an educator. So, you know what the difference between a large pizza and a jazz musician is? A large pizza could feed a family of 4.